Welcome. Hello, my name is Zasada. I'm the Executive Director here at the Cedar Lake Historical Association. I want to welcome you to the museum at Lassen's Resort for our 5th season of the History Roadshow. Normally, as the name implies, we're elsewhere, out in the community, holding these presentations, but I just didn't want to risk any closures or anything like that again this year. So we're here at home in the Members Lounge for the 3 presentations this year. We're going to begin today with the Ball family, and then in January we will be covering the Surprise family, and in March the Taylor family. So these are all early pioneer families of the Cedar Lake community. And perhaps you did the math and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on in December and February, right? We are actually really going to be on the road on both of those months. So Monday, December 6th, we are going to be at Portillo's Restaurant doing a Dine Out fundraiser. So if you want to join me for dinner from 5 to 8 p.m., 20% of the proceeds that evening are going to come back to support our organization. So even if you're not going to come into the restaurant to sit down and eat, you can go through the drive-thru. I think the only thing you can't do is order online. But as long as you mention the museum at Lassen's Resort between 5 and 8 p.m., 20% of your ticket will come back to us. And then same thing in Tuesday, February 22nd, we're going to Tavern on Main, which is the people who did the bar package for us at the Speakeasy this summer. 10% of the proceeds all day at their restaurant in Crumb are going to come back to benefit us. So I'm definitely going to be there by the time happy hour hits, but we'll get reminders of this on your email and in your newsletters and things like that, but I hope you'll help support us on the road that way. And then in keeping pace with the tradition that I started last year, for those of you who don't know, I had like a different t-shirt on every time last year and I was promoting something. Well, I have my Dewey Line t-shirt on. If those of you who came out for Steamboat would definitely recognize seeing us all crew running around in these t-shirts, but they're also available in the gift shop. So gift shops, and look at the thank you. Okay, so the gift shop is open. Memberships today, if you want to have memberships or t-shirts or ornaments or books or postcards. I even some candy and ice cream left over from the summer, so I'm more than happy to help you with your purchases today and fill stocking stuffers and whatnot. And I want to thank our members for coming out today, especially our new members who just joined today. You guys have supported us through one of the most exciting seasons we have ever had. Last year it was like through one of the most devastating. This year, through one of the most exciting. So on May 7th, we rebranded the museum as the Museum at Lassen's Resort. We had over 200 people come to the dedication. We debuted the B. Horner Cultural Award and awarded that to B herself. And then we also debuted the whole story of Cedar Lake Exhibit Hall. Very exciting event. Our membership base last year grew from 121 members to we're sitting at like 182 right now. Woohoo! Isn't that exciting? I'm very excited about that. We welcomed over 3,300 visitors during this season. That is definitely chart-topping for us. The highest I think we'd ever hit before was about 2,100 in 2019. So also another wonderful, and then over 1,000 people came for Steam Through History. So it was a really incredible, amazing summer. So I thank you all for your support. Lots of surprises in store for you for next year as well. I'm not going to share them right now. We'll save that for a future program. Let's get started here with our Ball Family History Roadshow program. So perhaps you're wondering, why did we choose the Ball family? In a nutshell, their religious, social, and educational endeavors and contributions make them one of the most significant pioneer families in our community. And even I would go so far as to say the Calumet region, and you can see if you agree with me by the end of the presentation. The pioneer days, just for your reference, are generally defined as 1830 to 1870, at least for the research that Scott had done for us for these presentations. So the family patriarch, Hervey Ball, was born in Massachusetts on October 16th, 1794. He was the 5th of 11 children. I believe the first 2 died very, very young, because I think all 3 of them were named Charles, something Latin for the first 3 kids in the family. Anyway, his ancestors, Francis Ball in particular, came over in 1640 and helped found Springfield, Massachusetts. He was the son, Francis, of William Ball of Wiltshire and one of 6 brothers, all of whom came in to seek their fortunes here in the Western world. All of the Massachusetts branch of the Balls are descendants of Francis and his wife Abigail. There is no connection that we know of to the Ball family, as in Ball Glass, as in Ball State University. I know that sometimes has been out there, but Scott's done research and the teachers did some research. None of us have ever found any connection to that part of the Ball family, so we just want to clarify on that. And I'm also going to tell you during the presentation here, I don't have a lot of photography of the family, which I'm really surprised about. So you get a lot of maps today. I love maps. And there's a map in the back of the room that I want you to remind me to show you after we finish the presentation. So this is an image of the Ball family coat of arms, brought over by someone named Colonel Ball. This was granted in 1613 to the family of Kent, Cheshire, and Northampton. It's described, now here's a little bit of a heraldry, is that what it's called? History for you. Described as argent, which means a tincture of silver, and I believe that means all around here on the bottom part of the coat of arms. And then that's a lion passant, meaning that it's walking, and a lion represented courage, nobility, royalty, strength, valor, those types of things. And then it says it was sable, meaning black. So I think that that was, like I said, like a silver with black and the lion coloring. And then on a chief of the second, that's this part at the top with the stars in it, that's called the chief. Or band, and it has 3 mullets or stars. Stars symbolize honor and achievement. Our Ball family, hailing from New England, had the same coat, or the arms in the middle here, but the top and the bottom were different. The top had a stag, again stag passant, meaning it looks like it's walking, and the stag, it says, or stag trippet, sorry, symbolizing one who will fight if provoked. So I don't know if that's why the Balls chose it or not, but that is what I found in the research. And then their motto was Semper Cavello, always be cautious. So just a little interesting nugget. Again, this family goes back several generations, and so we found this little crest that we wanted to share with you. Now, Hervey had many connections with wealthy and cultivated people. As mentioned, he was born and lived in West Springfield, Massachusetts. He was there from 1794 to 1820. He was educated for the bar, graduated at Middlebury College in Vermont in 1818, and studied law for 2 years in that state. He then lived in Columbia County, Georgia from 1820 to 1834, and there he had success as a lawyer and a member of the Augusta Bar. Also, while in Georgia, he was the colonel of a cavalry company in the state militia, and in Appling, Georgia, a postmaster. He was in the New England area from 1834 to 1837, so this was coming back from Georgia, and then finally made his way to Indiana in 1837, and I'll give you more details on that in a second. But just a couple of other career pursuits that I want to just kind of lump into this section about Hervey. He was a Lake County probate judge here from 1844 to 1849, a Lake County surveyor, a justice of the peace, the first worshipful master, which is like the senior officer of Lake Lodge Free and Accepted Masons from 1853 to 1859, a teacher, and a licensed preacher. So a very well-learned man. And again, I don't have a wedding picture. All I have is this picture of Jane when she was obviously much older, but he married Jane Horton on November 11th, 1824 in Springfield, Massachusetts. Jane was actually born October 7th of 1804, so she's 10 years younger than Hervey. Again, also in West Springfield. She was the only daughter of Dr. Timothy Horton of West Springfield, and she did have one brother. And her grandfather was also a physician. Which I'm going to refer to a ton of historical writings today, but I'm not going to specifically stop every single time and tell you where a quote came from. So if you want to know that level of detail, touch base with me after the program and we'll go find out where that information was gleaned from. Otherwise, we'll be stopping constantly because this family, as you're going to come to learn, wrote extensively about the history of our region. That's why we have so much information about them. Grandfather and father, they both attained considerable success in their profession, and they practiced for very long years also in West Springfield and resided in that same area. Jane either inherited or acquired this skill and inclination for the practice of medicine through her pedigree, and again, I'll talk to you more about that in a minute. But one of the interesting things I want to share first about Jane, this is a picture of a map that she made at the age of 13 in 1817. And it measured 11 inches by 22 inches. And also, this map at age 14 of the United States, measuring 16 inches by 19 inches. So it's thought that she first drew these all in pen and ink and then colored them with watercolor paints. The originals are held at the Calumet Regional Archives up at Indiana University Northwest. These are copies. You'll see where they're at and how I got these pictures in a second. Jane was educated in the best schools of Hartford, Connecticut in the natural sciences, especially botany, and was peculiarly fitted for teaching, one of the records noted. She was an acquaintance with those who were leaders in literary and social life between 1819 and 1824. And it says, she also had a rare acquirement, even now, given attention to Hebrew, and wrote those old characters with facility and beauty. Hervey and Jane had 7 children, so there's the list. I won't run through the names, but if you do math really quickly in your head, you're going to see that they lost 3 of their children at rather young ages. Heman Ball passed away at age 22, Charles at 31, and Henrietta at 22. Again, I'm not going to cover stories about the children specifically except for Timothy, but I do have information about the children that I can share with you as well after the presentation. When Hervey was about 43, Jane was about 33. They had had 5 kids by that point, and it was time to come to Indiana. So in 1837, now this is a road map, okay? This is traveling on highways. What I'm about to explain to you, they did not travel on these roadways, but I wanted you to have a frame of reference for how the route that they had traveled. So here's from the writings. The family went from New York City to Albany by steamer. At Albany, they took a canal boat to Buffalo. In April of 1837, they took a steamer from Buffalo to Toledo, Ohio. At Toledo, Hervey bought a team of horses, and then their household goods were sent by a sailing vessel, which arrived at Michigan City by the summer of 1837. When they got to the area, they settled at City West, which was in Porter County. Hervey worked as a surveyor and helped to lay out lots for a company that proposed to start a city at City West. So it was a village in Porter County located on the shore of Lake Michigan, approximately 10 miles west of Michigan City, situated near the mouth of Fort Creek, which is now known as Dunes Creek. And I know that there's probably no one in the world who's ever going to give you a presentation on City West, and I thought the history was super cool. So I'm going to share that with you for one little quick second here. We're going to take a sidetrack. So again, you see where it's located up there on the map. And Dunes Creek empties into Lake Michigan near the Indiana Dunes State Park Swimming Beach. That's what you would know it as now. The town was established in 1836, but by September or October of 1839, so just a couple of years, 3 years later, the town had been completely abandoned due to the financial panic of 1837. The village is notable for a visit from U.S. Senator Daniel Webster on July 4th of 1837. In a speech before the Whig members of City West, Webster wished the citizens good luck for the future, for the grand city on the lake, which led the overly excited Whigs of City West to think that they had an appropriation for a grand port of Indiana. Clearly that didn't happen. In 1840, there was a visit to the now abandoned village by a few people, including the then 12-year-old Timothy Ball, son of Jane and Hervey, and he found only empty homes at the site of the village. The last word of the fate of City West was in 1854 when people nearby noticed the smell of burning wood, a glow in the sky in the direction of City West. Investigation later that month found the village to be in ruins from a fire. Only the wooden 650-foot pier jutting out into Lake Michigan survived the destruction, but then that was even caught up in the waves by 1870. So as platted, you can see on that picture there, the town covered 25 blocks with rights-of-way for a railroad and a canal connecting the lake to the Little Calumet River. Neither the railroad nor the canal, clearly, were ever constructed. At its peak, the town was home to between 16 and 20 households, so this plat never came to fruition. There were no schools, no former churches. The town businesses included a sawmill, which used water power from Fort Creek, and a large hotel. After standing vacant for several years, the hotel was moved to Chesterton in the early 1850s. And between the town and the lake stood a Potawatomi burial ground. And the town was frequently visited by Potawatomi trading parties on their way to Baileytown, which you will probably hear a lot of history about Baileytown if you follow region history. So burials occurred at the Potawatomi Cemetery as late as 1838. So the Old Town site is now on the Indiana Dunes State Park property, and the only trace being a park shelter named City West Shelter. So next time you're at the dunes and you see that shelter, hopefully, you'll remember its connection to Cedar Lake because the Bull family first arrived there. So again, that was in 1837. Now, in the summer of 1837, Hervey came to Lake County to help survey land and discovered Cedar Lake. Charles Wilson was the original owner of the quarter section. So when I say the quarter section, I'm referring to the yellow box up on the screen. Hopefully you can see the outline from back there, or I'll show you closer after the presentation. So here, let me explain this first before we talk about this. So these are sections, how it says, like there says 28, 26, here's the 27 right there on that section of the map. These sections are all part of the township division system. So it's just a basic unit of the land survey system. A square piece of land is 1 mile by 1 mile, or 640 acres. And then there are 36 sections in a township. So Hervey's section, section 27, he's the yellow part, but the whole section there includes like half of it is part of the lake. It also has, I don't know if you can see, the eventual site of the Armour Town, which is where our beloved Bee Horner lived. And guess what? I live on old farmland over here. So I was really excited that this one little quarter section of land, I kind of sort of am connected to the Cedar Lake history. That made me really happy. So anyway, it's a very historically minded quarter section of our township. Let's see, so Charles Wilson was the original owner of that quarter section, afterwards bought by Jacob L. Brown, and then by Hervey. And we have a copy of the claim register, so I can also show you that after the presentation. It's too hard to see if I was to put on the screen, but it's pretty cool. So July 18th, 1837, the Jacob L. Brown claim was transferred to Hervey for $300. And it was approximately, I think it says 156 acres and 1/10, or something like that, as far as the size of the parcel. And it says here, one of the family writings, but from that young city on a great lake, meaning, what did we just call it, City West, from that young city on a great lake, the family removed to an inland prairie home on a beautiful little lake, where, when the year 1837 closed, there were the father, mother, and 5 children, and other members of the household. Another New England family was transplanted. Another side story to share here from Hervey's life. This is also recorded in one of the history journals. So in the winter of 1838, 1839, Hervey was making a return trip to Cedar Lake from Michigan City. And so this here circle is 20 Mile Prairie, this here is Cedar Lake. These are both going to be mentioned here in this little story. So it says, the nightfall found him, meaning Hervey, on the open area of 20 Mile Prairie in Porter County. The snow clouds obscured the sky, the wind blew, the horses missed the track, and he was lost. No houses were near. It was to him a night of suffering and danger. 2 or 3 circumstances combined to save his life. A star shone out for a moment and kept him from taking a direction that led yet further away from human abodes. Finding it useless to continue wandering around on the bleak prairie, having with him fortunately a bolt of satinette and having a pair of large and powerful horses, he wound the cloth around him and stood between the heads of the horses to seek some shelter from the wind. To grow weary and seek rest or lie down in the sleigh and become benumbed was to perish. And so he remained between the horses amid the bitter cold until a shrill sound, the distant crowing of a rooster before the morning dawn, indicated the direction of a human dwelling. Proceeding toward that cheering sound, he reached the house and found shelter, warmth, and rest. It was a night which he never forgot, the winter night spent on 20 Mile Prairie. So I thought that was a neat little snippet. Again, these history journals are full of some really interesting little stories. Now this map that I have up here, here's the full version of the map. I zoomed in for you on that section. Was actually made by Salone Robinson, I believe was the founder or father of Crown Point. So it was made approximately 1838, 1839, something like that. And he did the first mappings of Lake County in general, and it is noted in the writings that Jane, as the first resident painter in watercolors, helped to color one of Robinson's maps. Now, I don't know if it's exactly specifically this map, because the writings then also further indicate that it seems strange that not a solitary one of the hundreds of those first maps colored at Cedar Lake can now be found in the county. So again, I'm not sure if she colored that one or not for him, but again, a neat little connection between Crown Point and our Jane here in Cedar Lake. And again, her painting is going to come up again in a second. but I got to sidetrack you for one more minute. So I showed you that first map, 1838 from Solon Robinson. This other map right here from 1874 is a Hardesty sectional map, and I love maps, sorry. And there's that, and then here's a current aerial shot of Cedar Lake. Look at the difference in the shape of Cedar Lake. I'm not certain, I know for sure that Cedar Lake became smaller because different pioneer families did fill in parts of the lake in order to try and reclaim land and get, their lakefront properties and things like that. So I'm not certain which of these two maps most accurately depicts the shape of Cedar Lake. It very well could have been, with so many years in between, that the shape of the lake did change. You can see here in this one all the swampy marshlands at the bottom, and it's my understanding that even before these settlers, they had somehow tried to fill in 200 acres of the lake and just realized it was too marshy and swampy to actually be farmed and things like that. But Cedar Lake used to be at least 200 acres larger, if not. Okay, so yeah, so the present day shape of the map there. So sidetrack, but I just found it interesting, and I thought maybe someone in the room would as well. Now let's talk about Jane's watercolors again. So a restored watercolor painting of flowers that Jane painted is on display at Lincoln Elementary School in Cedar Lake, thanks to the research of the celebrities in the room, Kathleen Crumb and Betty Eaton. Raise your hands, ladies. Retired elementary school teachers who have been researching the Ball family for 50 years. They both taught for the Hanover Community School Corporation, and reproductions of the maps, they went up to IUN and obtained copies and had reproductions made, and so those are on display at the school as well, a picture of Jane as well as this watercolor painting that she had done. So that's where I was on Thursday morning. I was calling the school. I'm like, I need a picture of these maps. The lady wasn't even sure where they were at, so we found them there in the library. I was very happy. So when Jane and the rest of the family moved to Cedar Lake, her mother, Mrs. Elizabeth Horton, came from Agawam, Massachusetts, which I believe was West Springfield and just renamed, to live her remaining days at Cedar Lake. So again, that was around 1837, 1838. To make the Cedar Lake home attractive for her, her grandchildren planted flowers beside the house. Here's the description. They found beside the lake some wild columbine. These they transplanted, placing them beside the house where their grandmother could see their blossoms. They found also some wild rose bushes and placed them beside one of the windows that their fragrance might enter the room. They sent to New England for some dandelion seed, that these familiar yellow blossoms might be around their home, reminding them all of the Connecticut Valley meadows. Then, no such plant was to be seen, but now they are very abundant in Lake County. So I don't know if we have them to thank for the dandelion issues we have every year or not, but maybe in part, at least in my section of the town, right? So in 1838, one of the largest and one of the best log schoolhouses of the county was built at Cedar Lake on the land then held as claimed by Hervey Ball. So that was that section of land that I showed you. He, Hervey, allowed for the ground and paid the greater portion of the expense of erecting the house. So either June 10th of 1839, some sources say May 27th, the school was opened as a boarding school. The subjects taught included the elementary branches, elegant penmanship, drawing and painting, botany, philosophy, and Latin, Greek, and algebra. The largest and best library then in the county was accessible to these students. Obedience, duty, and obligation went hand in hand along with great personal freedom. During some of the winters, the school was taught by Hervey Ball. A few of the students of Lake County and from Porter and LaPorte counties attended this school. In penmanship, drawing, painting, and watercolors, and in botany, the teacher has had in this region no equal, meaning Jane herself. There were 7 boarders. At one point, some were self-boarders, some day scholars. It was not continued as a winter school later than 1850, but was operated as a summer school until 1855, serving a total of 16 years. It sent 6 students to colleges and seminaries and fitted many for life. Jane would continue to informally teach until her death. And this one is also claimed to be the first schoolhouse in Lake County, not that it was established by virtue of authority of law and supported by taxation, but that it was a common meeting place for instruction and improvement under the guidance of Judge Hervey Ball and his gifted sons and daughters. This cabin, having for years after they closed it as a school in 1855, housing hogs and chickens, and I believe pigeons too up in the top were roosting. It was torn down in 1903 or 1904. So this photograph on the bottom here was taken about 1900. Yeah, about 1900. So standing left to right, Margaret Meyer, John Horner, George Gervin, and John Geisen. These are all big names if you're doing the Armourtown research, and if you go back and listen to Jane's my presentation on V. Horner last year, you may recognize some of those names. So those were all Armourtown names, and that makes sense given the location of Hervey's land and these families who settled Armourtown and all of that. So another little notation here about life at Cedar Lake, plus some things that Hervey was very involved in developing. I want to share that with you next. He devoted himself to farming pursuits, of course, when he had his large parcel of land, giving his special attention to the training of his 7 children and to general interests for the good of the community. As you can imagine, like I had mentioned, he brought with him a large law and general library that was made available to the students at the school. He was thoroughly identified for 30 years with the religious interests of the county. Hervey was first in his line to become a Baptist. Previous generations of his family were in the Huguenot line. He welcomed any minister of any denomination to his home. He helped found the oldest Baptist society in Lake County, the Cedar Lake Baptist Church, back in 1838. It had met at Prairie Rest, Center Prairie, and the Ball School alternately. And about 1840, he started the Cedar Lake Sunday School. He was the first superintendent of that. Later, in 1865, he helped organize the Lake County Sunday School Convention. In June of 1841, he helped organize the Lake County Temperance Society with Solon Robinson and Norman Werner. That was discontinued about 1849 or 1850. He also organized the Cedar Lake Lyceum. That's a literary club. It says visitors were admitted, but no girls were among its members. And this was held each week during the fall and winter time. Then the following year, he founded or organized the Belle Lettresse Society. This admitted girls to an equality of membership and participation in its exercises. It met once a month when sure of moonlit nights. Between 20 and 30 young people derived much profit from the exercises of these 2 societies. He also helped to organize the Lake County Agricultural Society. So again, super quick side note on this. The Lake County Agricultural Society was organized at the courthouse in Crown Point on August 27, 1851. Hervey Ball was elected president. Due to a lack of funds, there was no fair held that autumn. The first fair was held at the courthouse, October 28, 1852. 69 entries were made and 30 premiums awarded, which amounted to $48. $10 were offered for the best 10 acres of corn, and $5 was offered for the second best. The fair was a success, even though it was on a small scale. Prizes were given for the following: horses, cattle, sheep, swine, butter, cheese, tomato ketchup, apples, squashes, beets, turnips, rutabagas, radishes, and potatoes. The receipts of the fair were $91, and the expenditures were $52.25. A very credible showing, and it was very encouraging to all who participated. So, Hervey had it going on. He was a busy man. After 22 years on the farm that I was talking about, outlined there in the yellow square, Hervey sold the property for $4,000. So remember, he acquired it for $300, sold it for $4,000 to Henry Dittmers in 1859. Then the family lived in a home at 14616 Parish Avenue, which is represented by the little circle down here at the bottom of the screen. During his retired farmer life, Hervey's associations were in part continued with the political and religious world, as he took a number of periodicals, agricultural, literary, political, and religious, and read extensively until the last year of his life. He wrote considerably for some agricultural papers, especially on the subject of bees. In keeping these, he was for several years very successful. And not to be overshadowed by Hervey, Jane was a fascinating woman in her own right, so let's talk about her for a second. Here's some very interesting nuggets from the history writings. She had brought from her father's home quite a chest of medicines and some surgical instruments, which she thought would be needed, and soon she became not in name, but in fact, the physician and dentist of the neighborhood. Her dentistry, however, extending no further than extracting and cleaning teeth. For extracting teeth and for medicine, she took some pay, but not for her time, and she was called from home sometimes in the night as well as in the day. Besides being the first academic teacher, she was also the first who might be called a woman physician of the county. She was often called for to visit the sick and to go for miles in the still hours of the night where there was human suffering. If she considered the patient quite dangerous, she would recommend the calling of a physician. If not very dangerous, she would treat the case herself. Although she was small, she was strong and had dauntless courage. She bled when needed. She would not needlessly inflict pain in her medical and dentistry work. With her medical training, if she gave attention to surgery, she would have taken off a limb from her own child or a stranger. Had she commenced life some years later and so shared the opportunities now granted to women, she would surely have become a distinguished female physician. As it is, she has in this department served her generation well. So those are writings that were most likely written towards the turn of the century, possibly by her son Timothy or another local historian about Jane. Hervey died at the family home on Parish Avenue, October 13th, 1868, at the age of 74. And he's buried in the Creston Cemetery, which is represented by the triangle. So there's the family home and the circle at the top, and here's the little triangle. So if any of you have gone to the church down there in Creston, I just heard Lakeside Artists Guild there last year. And then that cemetery there, which, oh, here. How about I show you a picture? That little white church that the Watercolors family, I believe, pastors, and that is where Hervey and Jane are buried. After Hervey's death, Jane moved to Crown Point, lived with her son James Hervey until her death in 1880. Now you'll see 3 names on the stone. We're going to talk about Timothy in a second. He's not actually buried there. But first, I have to talk about James Hervey because he is my favorite ball writer for one particular reason. He wrote an article in Timothy's book. It says Lake County, Indiana, 1884, an account of the semi-centennial celebration of Lake County, September 3rd and 4th, with historical papers and other interesting records prepared for this volume. So Timothy was listed as editor and publisher. The Old Settlers Association of Lake County, I'll explain that in a second. Crown Point, Indiana, printed at the Lake County Star Office, 1884. So James Hervey wrote an article for his brother's book all about Cedar Lake as a pleasure resort. We even have James' quote in room 4 in the Monon room. And I love this particular, I would stand here and read it to you right now if we had the time, because it's just so fascinating the way that he describes Cedar Lake in its early, very early, like the time when the Monon Railroad was coming through and things like that. So I will, I can email you guys the link actually if you want to read it. It's printed or published online, and you can read it for yourselves. But James Hervey is my favorite ball for that reason. So, okay, History Roadshow, back to the other balls that I was going to cover. So we're going to talk about Timothy Horton Ball, the oldest boy in the family, if you remember, born February 16th, 1826 in West Springfield at the home of his maternal grandfather, Dr. Timothy Horton, who himself was a descendant of Thomas Horton, who settled in 1638. So again, these two families, both the Balls and the Hortons, have a very long history in the United States. In 1828, Timothy went from his grandfather's home to his father's home. That's when the family moved to Columbia County, Georgia. In 1833, they returned to West Springfield with another sister and brother in tow, and they learned the New England customs and traditions. 1834, at the age of 8, Timothy started attending school in West Springfield. Before that, his father had provided the training for him. At the age of 9, he began studying Greek and Latin until he mastered both. He had a private tutor for his Greek language studies. He learned elementary geography, arithmetic, and botany from his mother. And as noted earlier, by 1837, the family had welcomed 2 more sons while they were in Massachusetts, and then they came to Indiana. So here's a couple of notes about Timothy's coming to Indiana. It says, for a little while, in the summer and fall, a home was found in the new village of City West on the shore of Lake Michigan, 10 miles west from Michigan City. But he made visits with his father, meaning Timothy, to the prairie region of Lake County in midsummer, and to that beautiful little lake, the Lake of the Red Cedars, where for the next 30 years the home of the Ball family was to be, and where in December of 1837 the entire family was comfortably domiciled. To this home of lake and prairie beauty, his grandmother from New York City soon came, and 2 little Cedar Lake sisters, like prairie birds, also came, making in all, without the domestics, usually 2 or 3 in number, 10 members of the transplanted New England family. This became the dear spot, the dearest at length to him of all home spots of earth, where he learned something of farm work, of raising cattle and sheep and hogs, and learned to hunt and to spear fish and to swim, and to pull and row and scull a boat, and where the most important experiences and events of his life took place. At Cedar Lake, Timothy loved to tend the large flower gardens for his mother and sisters, and I will note the flower bed that we have out here in front of the museum, we had received a grant from the Lake County Master Gardeners a few years back. When we planted everything that's in that garden, we went to the writings of Timothy Ball to figure out what types of plantings were native to our area, and that's the 7 or 8 plants that we chose. That's what's in the flower bed. So if you are a gardener who would like to help us maintain that lovely perennial garden, we would love to have your help because it does get very overgrown by the end of summer. And of course, Timothy also attended the Ball School in Cedar Lake, where his mother and father both taught. He studied English, arithmetic, surveying, and philosophy. Also a large amount of reading, farm work and hunting, reading a variety of poetry. And before college, he resumed his studies in the classics. It says, although he loved reading, he did not care for Shakespeare's works. He sometimes even performed his father's county surveyor's duties. His first teaching experience was at a public school on the east side of Cedar Lake in the winter of 1843, but then he came to teach at the Ball School, as well as many other places, as you're going to hear in one second. But let's go back and remember how we talked about a lot of these historical writings cover significant historical detail on the religious nature of the family's activities. And so there's a little bit of a summary here about Timothy. His first religious interest began at his Agawam birthplace when he was 8 years of age, when he believes the Holy Spirit first visited his heart and caused him to become anxious in regard to his welfare after this life. Caused him to rest no longer satisfied with repeating his child prayers learned from a mother's lips, but to pray in reality to his heavenly Father. Caused him in the still hours of night to inquire of that mother who always wakened readily to attend to any wants of her children, in regard to the endless future and in regard to the prospect before human beings in eternity. Then took hold of his soul, never to let go or loosen its strong grasp the meaning of immortality, and of that short and simple declaration, the soul must exist forever. So Timothy was received as a member of the Cedar Lake Baptist Church, April 19th of 1845, and on Sunday, April 20th, he was baptized at Cedar Lake. From 1848, hold on. Yes, okay. From 1848 to 1850, he attended Franklin College in Indianapolis, earned his bachelor's degree. He was principal of Hendricks County Seminary in Danville, 1850 to 51. And in February 8th of 1851, he was licensed to preach as well at Danville. Then in 1853, he received his master's also from Franklin College. He married, and that's the picture you see on the left there, Martha Creighton, not their wedding picture, but a picture of them. April 19th, 1855. Martha's the daughter of Reverend Hiram Creighton, a well-known pastor of Clark County, Alabama. And Timothy at the time was principal of the Grove Hill Male and Female Academy in Clark County. And December 30th of 1855, they had come back up here. He was ordained at Crumb, and he was a pastor in Lake County, Indiana from 1855 to 1860 at the North Street Baptist Church in Crumb. He was a forceful speaker, and it was said by a man named Bartlett Woods that Timothy carried the gospel to more people in Lake County than any other minister ever did or would. He was a circuit rider in the county. He visited the sick, helped the poor, and officiated many funeral services. He was also a student at Newton Theological Seminary in 1860 to 1863 out in Newton, Massachusetts. He moved officially from Cedar Lake to Crown Point in 1863. And there's a note about his physical appearance, see if you agree after looking at these pictures, of this little old elf-like man as a queer one and old crank, that this white-bearded, white-haired man with this mild child's face, frocked always in a queerish black coat, broad-brimmed hat, and limp white tie, and walking unmindful of our mocking calls, should come to stand as a symbol of early Lake County culture is something to check all rash estimates. So none of the other family members were described in many of the readings we found to that level of detail. So Timothy's home, far as we know, kind of up there where that red dot is, 200 East. We think he lived somewhere in that area of Crown Point, East North Street. His home, it says, was a strange little rambling brown house that had ecclesiastical windows of stained glass. Like I had mentioned, he became an ordained Baptist minister. That happened in 1865. It says he did not crusade against the use of liquor or tobacco or women's suffrage as other ministers did during his time. He was concerned with recording events of his time. Now, not to be outdone by his parents as a teacher, he founded the Crown Point Institute in Crown Point. It was organized May 31st, 1865, and held 4 terms each year of 10 weeks each. It also offered a 3-year college course for young ladies. Martha, his wife, helped her husband in that establishment of Crown Point Institute, and she was also an excellent Sunday school teacher. He educated several hundred students who became teachers, doctors, farmers, businessmen, and lawyers. Tax-supported and free public schools after the Civil War weakened the institute, and it was then sold to the town of Crown Point in 1871 for $3,600 for use as a public school. So 200 East North Street is where the school administration building currently sits today. It's the 3rd building on that site. First it was Timothy CPI, then the Northward School, and then Timothy Ball School, which then again became the Administration Center in 1980 when the new Timothy Ball School was built on Summit Street where you see it today. He also founded the Lake County Gymnasium and Normal School in 1873. That's that site down here. This in is south, so if you see for your bearings, here's the square. Crown Point Institute was north of the square, and this next one that he founded was south of the square. This was the only school of this type to operate in Lake County. Ball was the only, or it says the Lake County portion of the region. Ball was the only faculty, and a term usually lasted 13 weeks. This school was to acquaint potential teachers with the liberal arts and sciences and the best methods of teaching each of them. The school closed in 1879, I love this part, when Ball's other interests occupied him. Again, just like his parents, he was all over the place with all the different things that he became involved in. So the present site, 352 South Main Street, where the First United Methodist Church is located, that's where we think was the site of this normal school. He became the historical secretary of the Lake County Old Settlers and Historical Association on July 24th of 1875. And from 1884 until 1910, which I had just shown you that one journal that his brother James Hervey wrote in, the reports of the historical secretary were printed every 5 years, which was the work of Timothy Ball. In many of his reports, he provided temperatures for the season, so I'm interested to go back and check and cross-reference temperatures from then to now. During his later years, he devoted much of his time to historical writings. And because of the length of his name, you may see it written as T.H. Ball, T.H.B., or sometimes, which this is really peculiar to me, Y.N.L., which is the last letters of each of his names. Okay. A few years before his death, he fell, he broke his hip. That kept him in his house most of the time, but he continued to write and take interest in current events. He and his wife often wintered at the home of their daughter, Georgietta Ethberta, in Alabama from the time that she had married. She got married in 1897, so they would pretty much winter down in Alabama. And then his wife died in Alabama in 1912. Timothy stayed there as well until about 18 months later, and he died in 1913. So some of the reports are going to say that he died in Crown Point. Not true. That one headstone that I showed you, that one, says he died in 1915. Not true. He was down in Alabama at his daughter's home in 1913. So again, both Timothy and his wife are buried down in Alabama in her family plot. This marker just has him listed on there because of his significance to the county and when they put the marker up for the parents. They also had a son, by the way. Timothy had a son as well, born in 1856. Herbert attended the Bennett Medicine College of Chicago and graduated in 1884, so didn't really do much more research though on them. Now Timothy, like I said, died on November 8th, 1913, almost 88 years of age, was buried in Watley, Alabama at the Creighton Family Cemetery. There's the marker stone down there and the memorial stone up here in the Crescent Cemetery. So a couple of things just to share with you about Timothy. These are again from like the little obituary newspaper articles. This is why Timothy means so much to our organization, to Lake County in general. Lake County has been very fortunate in having so capable a historian as the late Reverend Timothy H. Ball, who gave much attention to and put an unlimited amount of hard work in compiling its early history. His was the controlling spirit which organized the Old Settlers Association, and in later years added to that the Historical Society. Mr. Ball was ably supported and assisted by many intelligent early settlers in making their annual meeting a source of pleasure and satisfaction. He has left to posterity one of the best histories of any county in the state. One of those who should not be forgotten, this is another one, one of those who should not be forgotten is the oldest son of the Ball family who grew up in that community which first made settlement around the Lake of the Red Cedars. With his father and mother, who were true pioneers, Timothy came to Lake County in 1837 when a boy of 11. So he was an eyewitness from the beginning. He saw and knew the first county commissioners who divided the new county into 3 townships and who, after the struggle was over, there's a whole story to this, they tried to locate the county seat here in Cedar Lake. That didn't happen. Anyway, permanently located the county seat at Crown Point. In 1875, the old settlers appointed him as their historical secretary, for which position he was eminently fitted. And without his diligent work, many of the things which we have heard and learned would have passed into the realm of oblivion. Ball had a keen sense of historical values and was reasonably successful in persuading his contemporaries to write their own memoirs and reminiscences. It is not surprising that those concerned with the history of the region have consistently deferred to and referred to the writings of this unusual man. So that must have came from the article that described his physical description as elf-like. Here, in September 15th, 1923, the Lake County Old Settler and Historical Association had a celebration at the old LeGrand Meyer home, which I believe is the home that was torn down a couple of years ago and now has a new home being built on that site. At that time, they placed a marker at Cedar Lake honoring Hervey, Jane, and Timothy for their contributions to Lake County. So as you can see, it's sitting right out in front of Jane Ball School, and it's my understanding that, because I had said, you know, it's built so close to the school building, which obviously would not have been there in 1923. I was asking Scott, did they ever move this marker and relocate? He says no. So they literally sited the school around a marker that was put in 1923 to honor the Ball family. So let me read this to you. In memory of Jane A.H. Ball, first school teacher in Lake County, Judge Hervey Ball, her husband, early probate judge in Lake County, their son, Reverend Timothy H. Ball, Lake County historian. Through the influence of these people, this community remained one of the most prominent in religious, educational, and literary achievements during pioneer days. And the stone is placed approximately on the site of the first public schoolhouse in Lake County. So that log schoolhouse that I showed you, I don't believe it was exactly on this site. It was a little bit further towards Armour Town, but close enough. It's at least in the right quadrant of the section of the community. So I want to thank you all for your rapt attention this afternoon. Like I said, we can take some questions now and share additional stories. And I'm going to first pause the presentation. So again, thank you for coming out. Don't forget about December, what did I say, Monday, December 6th or 8th? What did I say? The 6th. Come meet me up for Portillo's for dinner. And don't forget that we also have the tree that we just decorated up at the Welcome Center in Hammond. So we have a Museum at Lassen's Resort themed tree. So when you're out and about this season, go and check that out. It'll be up until January. And you can see all sorts of ornaments up there on our tree. So thank you for your attention.